Erin, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, Erin, you are in select company here in that you're one of the few people who is a repeat guest on the show. And your story is fascinating and it continues to grow. And so it's great to have you here. And what I'd love to do is the last time I had you on the show was back in 2020. So it's been about 4 years now. I think a lot of things have changed. You've certainly grown significantly. So I'd love to get an update on where the practice is today in terms of the size, the number of team members, how many advisors you have, AUM, just sort of get a sense for where the business is right now.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I consider it a privilege. So this is fun. Yeah, since 2020, we've had some good growth. I feel like we're up to just over 4 billion in assets under management now, and about 82 team members, I think is the latest number, 20 of which are advisors. And then we have built out our operational team around the advisors to support them, just to be able to give what we feel like would be just a better level of advice. We're constantly trying to elevate the service we provide to clients, and that's been part of what has driven our growth. We've had both organic growth and inorganic growth over the last 4 years.
Yeah, and really two key things I want to talk about today. So one is when we last talked in 2020, you had about 2 billion. And so now you basically doubled here in about 4 years. So I want to go into a little more detail on what you're attributing that to. And then second is I want to do a little bit of a deep dive on the whole client experience in the financial planning experience. So you've got a great wealth management shop there, and I'd love to just get some details on how you do financial planning and the whole experience that your clients have. So let's start with just picking up on how do you go from 2 billion to 4 billion in 4 years. Now, obviously, we've had a pretty decent market during that period of time, so that certainly helps. But is there anything new that you may be doing or anything that you're trying to that you've enhanced here over the past 4 years? And also perhaps how much of that growth was due to organic growth versus how much of that was due to perhaps bringing on other advisors to the team that brought existing assets?
Yeah, good question. So a big part of it has been our focus on organic growth. So we have built out essentially an events and marketing team, and that has helped to drive attendance at our workshops that we've done. We've done these workshops, these educational workshops for clients for 15 years or so. And last year we did 15 of those events, and they've all been remote since COVID. We used to do them all in person, and then we opened it up to remote virtual events coming out of COVID. And on some of those events, we'll get 200 to 400 attendees, some clients and some prospects as well. And we're just putting a lot of time and resource into those. Our goal would be to bring best in class education to our clients. And so last year we threw those events out. A big component of those events was the prospect side, and we brought about 400 million of new clients in through those events in 2023. And then on the inorganic side, we made a strategic acquisition in the high net worth space last September. We acquired a firm that had roughly $1 billion in assets. It was a firm in the Ameriprise system, and the Ameriprise system has about 10,000 practices, and this was the one that had served the most affluent client base. So they're really good on the financial planning and investment side in terms of what they deliver to clients. So that acquisition, it brought some assets, a good amount of assets, but more importantly for us, it was acquiring key capabilities, because I felt like we're already delivering good value to clients on the tax planning side, but we're big believers in good's the enemy of great. And I tell my team that regularly. We're never going to be a firm that accepts status quo. So we're just going to continually look for ways to improve what we to deliver to clients. So that was the acquisition. So in the last 4 years, it's been roughly half organic and roughly half inorganic in terms of the doubling in size.
So let's talk a little more about the organic piece here. So you mentioned the events, and I happened to attend one of your virtual events here not long ago,
Yeah.
and thought that it's pretty interesting how you conducted that. So I do want to talk about that. But you mentioned 200 to 400 attendees. So I know a lot of people listening to this, their mouth is watering right now, like, oh my gosh, how do you get 200 to 400 people at an event like that? So and you mentioned that, hey, we really sort of expanded the event capability. So talk to me about what you did there and how do you get 200 to 400 people attending a virtual event?
Well, that's what I asked our leader of the marketing team, who's my wife. We hired her as a firm about 3 years ago to come from, she was working at T-Mobile, developing apps and doing marketing there as well. But she's helped to bring technology and AI to our marketing platform. So where she's doing a lot of digital advertising, and essentially, I don't, you're probably well aware of it, but you can do geofencing now where, traditionally if you did advertising, you would just advertise to a very large market. And now you can get so narrow and target specific zip codes, specific neighborhoods, and then specific addresses as well, and get a lot of good demographic information on the areas and the people that you would want to target. So that's part of it, the digital advertising. And then part of it is word of mouth. We've just been doing them long enough, and the content is something we put a lot of time and effort into developing the content. So like last year, the most attended workshop was one on year-end tax strategies. So we do a countdown in that workshop at 60 minutes. And we just do a countdown of the top 10 tax strategies that we see high net worth consumers tend to miss. And we go through it relatively quickly. We try to put together good and compelling visuals. And then the other aspect of it is we create a written version of those workshops as well. So for someone, we're in the era of Zoom fatigue, where there's so many online meetings, it can be harder to get people to show up to a 60-minute webinar. I personally wouldn't do that as a consumer. But so we offer these written recaps after the fact. So that gets the reach to a wider place. And we have, I think Cara was saying, she leads the marketing team. I think Cara was saying, last I heard, it was around 14,000 contacts on our list that have signed up to just be made aware of the workshops when they happen, what the topic is, and then if they can't attend, again, they can get the written recap.
And so how many total clients or households roughly do you have?
2,800.
2,800. Okay. And so of these 200 to 400 that might attend, roughly, are those all prospects, or is it a combination of clients and prospects?
It'd be a combination. I'd have to ask her what the percentage is. I know it varies from workshop to workshop because, we do that year-end tax strategies workshop. Another one of the popular ones has to do with planned giving, where we're talking about charitable giving and specifically giving strategies that help people redirect what they would otherwise pay in tax to charity. So it would be in those conversations, it's less about can you afford to give away a bunch of money that would result in you reducing your lifestyle during retirement. And it's more around your high net worth. You're going to pay a lot of tax in the next 5 to 10 years. Why don't we target that money and reduce that amount and shift that amount to charities or causes that are important to you? So we get a lot of traction from that. And on that one in particular, we'll invite one of the planned giving directors at a charity to co-present. So we'll spotlight that charity, and then that charity. So like the last one we did, we partnered with Children's Hospital, and their planned giving director also attended and presented. And then they invite their donors to come just be educated on some of the strategies that'll hopefully motivate them to give away more money.
And you mentioned the geofencing, so let's talk about that for a second here. What media are you using? Is this like Google Ads? Is this Facebook? Yep. Or what's sort of the media that you're using for the geofencing?
Yeah, it's both of those. It's Instagram too. And then it's some of the local community ones. She mentioned Nextdoor is one as well, where you can, and those are sometimes significantly less expensive. And yet you end up getting a different market, just different consumers that will consume those various types of media.
And are you using Zoom, or what actual platform are you using for the virtual webinars?
Yeah, we're using Microsoft Teams.
Microsoft Teams. Okay, yeah. Great. And so you mentioned 2 or 3 of the different events that you're doing. And I was also looking at your upcoming events page and just some of that you've either done recently or you've got coming up here. Creating tax-free retirement income, the power of financial planning, planning to give, market update, maximizing Social Security and Medicare, year-end tax strategies, ESG, investing to do good, and then planning to give at the end of the year. So any additional comment on those? Anything that you found, are particularly resonating? I think you mentioned one of your top ones was on sort of tax stuff. So are the tax ones the ones that typically resonate the most, or what do you see?
Yeah, that's a big one. And then the market updates, especially as volatility ticks up in the stock and bond markets, those have been well attended. So we do those quarterly. We do those more frequently than the other ones. The other topics we would tend to do once a year. The market updates we do once every quarter. And we have one next week. We got one on Friday, and have a good amount of attendees for that one, especially again with the market volatility ticking up.
Yeah. And so what's the follow-up process? So you get 200 to 400 people on a webinar, you get some people, do you have like a call to action in the webinar, or what is the process from someone signs up to the webinar to they actually become a client? What would sort of that thread look like?
Yeah, good question. So throughout the webinar, we will speak to various ways that we could create engagement with the prospects. So for example, we would say if they have questions on anything, let us know, and we can send them some of the visuals from the workshop. We create checklists as well. So like in the planned giving workshop, we have checklists for resources for tax planning associated with charitable giving, with ways to evaluate different charities, with ways to find different charities that someone would be motivated by. And then in the year-end tax strategies workshop, we'll have case studies that we have built. Like one of the case studies gets into how we had two sets of clients who had identical amounts of income, where they were both retired and living on $144,000 of income. One of the clients, though, that had not done proactive tax planning was paying about 12% in tax on that $144,000 of income. The other set of clients had been doing proactive tax planning for 8 years, and their tax rate was 3.48%. And not just this year, but in every year, essentially in perpetuity in their financial plan, it's projected to be roughly that unless tax rates change dramatically. So we'll create case studies like that. And people tend to like those and ask for them because it makes it just feel more real, going from this esoteric, nebulous subject to actual clients and specific tactical, concrete action steps that can be taken. And like in the market update too, we'll have some written commentary where we'll just tell the attendees, if you want any of this stuff, just let us know. Just put it in the chat thread. And then even if someone does not say in the chat thread they want any particular thing, we'll send everybody the written summary. And that has created engagement. Now, the call to action at the end that we do offer a free consultation, and we just tell prospects, if you already have a financial advisor, all we would do in that consultation is ask some questions and figure out what they really like about their experience with their advisor, maybe some things that they don't like or might be wondering about. And then we would offer to give them concrete and actionable ideas that they could take away to potentially improve their situation. So I think it comes across maybe, hopefully, like a non-threatening, just let's have a cup of coffee and talk and see if what you're doing is great. And if it isn't, if there's some gaps, we can give you some ideas and you can go take those to your advisor if you want, or we can help. And that's a way
So,
that we're creating engagement.
So with those different things that you're doing there to create engagement throughout the actual presentation and then a call to action at the end, let's say for every 100 people that attend the webinar, roughly how many on average might actually engage with you where they've taken that first proactive step to reach out to you and say, hey, send me this, send me that, or they schedule a call with you? Are we talking 5 people? Or are we talking 25 out of 100 that just through those engagement things are proactively indicating, hey, I want something more from you?
Yeah, it's a good question. So if we had 100 prospects, not clients, but prospects, it would be those that would engage initially would be something like 10 to 20. It would be something in that range. And then after we send the written recap, that number goes up by maybe 5, something like that. And then from there, as far as the number that we would then get a consultation with, it would be in the 5 to 10 range.
Okay. So let's say we've got somewhere between 10 to 20 people that have done some kind of proactive reach out through the 2 things you just described there. Now, what about the other 80 roughly that did not engage through the presentation or engage after you sent the summary? Do you then take those 80 people and put them into some kind of drip system, or what is the follow-up process for those that didn't actually engage through the earlier methods?
Yeah, so they're in that pool of 14,000 that I mentioned, where we have this pool of folks in our CRM who have said they want to be updated on when we do these events. And a lot of them, what I've started to learn about marketing more as we've gotten into building this department out is what did they say? The latest statistic I saw is the average person, it takes 17 communications before it actually turns into something concrete. So it doesn't, I think a lot of us, and I've done this as well, get impatient. You do an event and expect to get a bunch of clients, but it's been a big work in progress over a number of years. So we're now getting some clients who didn't attend an event this year, but they attended one 5 years ago. And they're seeing, though, the drip. They're seeing the invites and they're saying, that's building in their mind a level of credibility that, yeah, we're on top of the tax planning, we're on top of the estate planning, we're doing market updates, and they see the written recaps. And then they'll just reach out. So those wouldn't even be included in the 10 to 20 that attended the workshop, that last one, that are engaging. It's just they came in years ago and are now deciding the time is right.
Yeah, and that's a funny thing about marketing is sometimes it's difficult to, where do we attribute this new client? Do we attribute it to the last webinar that they attended, or they've attended 3 webinars, which one was it? Or they give me a referral, but then they attended a webinar. So is it a referral? Is it, so on. So, but that's probably not something, we really have to worry too much about. And then also this idea that someone may have attended a webinar 3 years ago, but now they're just reaching out. So that's the beauty of making sure that you continue to drip on these people, is because it just depends on where they're at sort of in the funnel. If we go back to that idea,
Right.
is if they're at the very early stages, if they're 3, 4 years from retirement and now they're just sort of getting some education, they may not need you for 3 or 4 years.
Yep.
Otherwise, other people are like, hey, I just got laid off. It was unexpected. I need an advisor right now. So they might
That's right.
be, those 5 to 10 people that are engaging. So, that's sort of the
Exactly.
beautiful thing about the ongoing marketing is we want to be out there. We want to be top of mind. We want to be the first person they think of when they're ready. So when you're
Yep.
ready, we want to be there.
Yeah, life events will come up like you just mentioned, and then sometimes it's a event with their financial advisor or a non-event, like something that upsets the client, right? I don't know, like they're not getting a call back from their advisor in a timely fashion. Maybe there was a service mistake, maybe something they that had just been a slow burn for them, and then something happens and it's the straw that breaks the camel's back, and they decide they want to talk to someone else. They want to look out there. And that's what the stats we're seeing are: high net worth clients, one, want to have multiple advisors, and two, are more likely than ever now than any time in the history of these statistics to seek out second opinions and move if they're not really happy. So that ends up being part of our motivation to continue to elevate the client experience, the service that we're providing, and then also stay on top of the marketing and events, just so we hopefully then stay on top of mind with consumers that have other advisors that they might not be perfectly happy with.
And with this ongoing drip that you do, what does that look like? I mean, I would imagine you're inviting them to all the different events that you're doing, but is there some newsletter that goes out? What is sort of the ongoing communication to these 14,000 people?
Yeah, that's a good question too. So we do social posts regularly, like a few times a week. And a lot of those folks have friended us on Facebook or Instagram. And so they see our publications that way. And then the ones that haven't, we will email those posts. Not the purely social ones. Like we do some social ones where we're just doing a team member spotlight or something like that. But the ones where it's where we're leading up to a workshop. So if it's the year-end tax strategies workshop, we're doing several posts in advance of the workshop, teeing up the topic and talking about how whatever, like a bunch of these tax strategies are missed, or we might spotlight one of the tax strategies in advance of the workshop, just to get people interested in thinking about it, and sharing deadlines and stuff like that that might be related to the topic that we're covering in the workshop.
And I haven't heard you mention LinkedIn. So do you do anything on LinkedIn for marketing purposes?
Good catch. Yeah, so it's LinkedIn as well.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Instagram. I don't think there's a lot of advisors out there that are using Instagram for business purposes. How long have you been using Instagram, and what kind of feedback or results are you getting from that?
That's another good question. So I don't know the results. It's been hard to zero in on, like what you were saying earlier. When you get a client, it's hard to know, was it the last workshop, was it a Facebook post, was it a LinkedIn post, was it a digital advertising, Google ads? We ask, but we don't always get the answer, and sometimes consumers don't even know how they're like, oh, we heard of you and we looked you up and called you. And so we don't always know, but we've been using Instagram for 3 years now. And that's the version. I mean, a lot of advisors would already know this, but I've come across some that don't. So Facebook would be the social media where you might do wordier posts, where they can be, even blog posts we have put onto Facebook or white papers, and Instagram's going to be more visuals. Less text.
YouTube, again, haven't heard YouTube yet. Are you doing anything on YouTube?
We have not. That's been the tricky one to figure out with our compliance department. So, and we haven't figured out a way to do that.
Okay. And the list of 14,000, it sounds like that was all organic. Is
Yep.
that like from 0 to 14,000 since you hired your wife as the marketing person, or is that really developed over the past 25 years?
Yeah, I'd say probably 10 years or so we've been building that. But it accelerated over the last 3 to 4 since we really put intentionality into the marketing and events department.
Okay. And the system that you use, like to do the dripping, is that MailChimp? Is that internal system through Ameriprise, or how do you physically get and communicate to those 14,000 people?
It's Salesforce. We do it all through Salesforce.
Okay, great. All right. Anything else on the sort of the marketing side or business development that is sort of accounting for the organic growth side?
On the organic, it would just be the emphasis that whether it's workshops or whether it's podcasts or whether it's, I got a couple friends that do radio shows. I think longevity is a big part of it. One of the latest stats I saw with podcasts was something like 80% of the people that have done podcasts don't continue, don't keep at it for 3 years or more. So some of it is just being consistent, and the more consistent. So there's a million podcasts out there, obviously, but the ones that, a lot of them are just brand new and they're not going to be around. So just having that consistency is key. That's been key for us with the workshops.
And then as far as your role, so you're the founder, you're the CEO, you're the head guy here at the firm. So how do you view your role in marketing in terms of, are you the face of the marketing? Do you have the whole team around you that really does all the social posts, and maybe they interviewed you to get some quotes and then they use that? How engaged are you specifically on the marketing side versus the rest of the team does all that stuff?
Yeah, good question. We have a, a good team where they end up doing a lot of the posts and the marketing strategy and planning. I ended up creating the bulk of the content over the last 15 years, and the output of that would be the workshops. And we would call that anchor content, where a workshop is 60 minutes. It's a big piece of content. Not everybody has the appetite to go consume that much, but we would call that the anchor content. And from that, we can take micro content and create bits and pieces that people will be more likely to consume. A lot of the prognosticators in our industry say the consumer trend you see with Netflix and bite size, TikTok and YouTube shorts. It's like the younger generations, they don't want to sit and watch a movie anymore, a 2 hour movie. They want to watch 5 second videos. Like my 14-year-old son came to me last night. I'm watching the Olympics and he comes over with his phone and he's showing me within like a minute, I don't know, he scrolled through like 10 different videos. It was just amazing how fast it is. And certainly there's some issues I have concerned with for the kids and their attention spans. But I think consumers in general, at least that's what the prognosticators say, they're going to want to consume content that way. So we're taking that big anchor content, like a year-end tax strategies workshop that has 10 different tax strategies in it. And then we're creating the micro content, which will be short social posts, one devoted to one tax strategy, another post devoted to another one, and even short videos that can come from there. So our marketing team isn't like creating brand new content and writing, but they're taking this anchor content that we've developed over many years and just putting it into different, more consumable marketing venues.
Yeah, and I think what you described there is spot on in terms of, it really seems to me like it's bookends, in that on one end you've got the super short content, you've got the TikTok generation that short attention spans and we want to be entertained, and then at the
Yeah.
other end you've got the long form video. And so I know you mentioned you're not really doing YouTube yet, but the advisors who are most successful on YouTube, their videos are 15 minutes, 18 minutes, 20 minutes long. And,
Yeah,
we've all heard, oh, your video shouldn't be more than 2 or 3 minutes long, 90 seconds, they're going to click off. But if you have a specific topic, and most of these advisors that are successful on YouTube, they're focusing on retirement planning. They're taking one specific topic and they're going deep on that. They've
yeah,
got a very eye-catching, attention-grabbing thumbnail. They've got a picture of themselves on there and with some facial expression, and they're pointing or they're holding up 3 fingers or 5 fingers or what have you. So there's sort of a real formula there. But the bottom line is, if someone is searching for, should I start taking Social Security at 62, what are the pros and cons of that? Well, you're going to have a video for 15 minutes that talks
yeah,
about that. And the algorithm is going to pick up on that. And everyone else that's searching that question on YouTube, if you got a good video, your video might be shown because of the algorithm. So definitely it's like really short content or really long content. And it really gets back to, well, what is the objective of the person who is looking for content? Are they looking to get educated? If so, the long content. If they're looking to get entertained or maybe a quick answer, the short end. Problem with the short end is AI is now starting to take up a lot of that. So you go to
right.
Google, you type in a question, and now in a lot of cases, you'll see a short AI response from Google, and your content will never get shown on
Yeah,
that. So we got to figure out how can we sort of outsmart that.
yeah, yeah. And that's where it's a big area where we're investing in is new technologies and AI platforms and starting to use it in small pilots, either with one or two advisors on the team or with a specific set of clients or prospects, and just seeing how it works, and then trying to modify it and enhance it in a way where it will really work. Because you're right, that's the big force.
Yeah. This is a bit of a random question here, but if you think about all the different roles that you have to play here, we've been talking about marketing, we've been talking about business development. So that is certainly a role as a founder, a leader of a firm. You're also the CEO of the firm. So you got to run the business. You're also a financial advisor. So you have clients that you're advising. So as you think about the different roles that you play at this stage of your career, how would you say that you allocate your time among the different roles that you play? So how do you allocate your time? And then a second part of that is, how do you allocate your energy, in the sense that which of those roles are the one that you go to bed at night excited to get up in the morning to perform that particular role?
Yeah, I love that question too. It's a big part of what I do centers in how are we going to help clients in a better way than we did, like what we do now and how we help clients. Probably everybody in this industry is so different than 20 years ago. We used to help people with doing a basic asset allocation, picking some mutual funds, and that was our value proposition. Now a lot of us are doing financial planning, a lot of us doing very comprehensive financial planning. And so a big part of what I'm doing is joining client meetings and supporting the advisors on our team to be able to look for ways to elevate the advice we're giving to clients. So I love that. That's where I get energy, because I'm a financial advisor at heart. I started the business just working with clients one by one, very interpersonal relationships. I love it. I get energy from that. And I also am a builder. So I get way more energy if I'm building something versus maintaining it. And so I want to build the experience that clients get. I want to build it and make it better and better and better. So a big portion of the time is under that sphere. And then some of it too is just figuring out ways to help the team and support the team. So leadership team where I was no longer able to be the supervisor for a bunch of direct reports. So brought on a COO, an awesome COO named Mark, brought on a director of client experience, brought on a director of the marketing and events department, brought on a director of the financial planning team, brought on a CIO to lead the investment team. So brought on really good leaders so that it's like I only have so many hours in the day, and I'm probably not nearly as good at those things as someone that we brought on who spends all of their time in that department, in that area of expertise. And so what I end up doing is meeting with very regularly the leaders of those departments, and then asking questions of team members. What are you experiencing in client meetings that you like? What do you not like? What are the clients saying? What are they responding to? So I remember listening to a podcast years ago about the Home Depot, the CEO, the new CEO there. He spent the number one thing he spent time on in the first year there was walking the floors of Home Depot and just talking to the folks that are stocking the shelves and working with the customers. And he would stop and ask customers what they liked and didn't like. And then he would invite once a week one of the floor workers at Home Depot, not like a manager, just a floor worker. He'd invite him to his house and just have dinner with the family and just get to know people and learn again those are going to be the people that know they got their finger on the pulse of how things are going. Like, how is the service and experience? And not just for the client or the customer, but for the workers, the team members. So that ends up being a big part of the role, which all goes into like trying to build a culture that is healthy and energizing. The latest thing I saw in HBR and Harvard Business Review was the average millennial would consider working at a place that has a sense of purpose, where they feel connected to the sense of purpose and the culture. They would take a 20% pay cut. That's a huge number. Like, that's a giant number. And we don't want to do that. We want to pay people really well, but also incentivize them to stay by creating an environment where they're energized and they, in general, feel good about what they're doing and then how we're helping clients. So some of what I do too is helping the whole team tie and connect to purpose and meaning, because we're in a fortunate industry where we actually do get to help clients. Like, I've told my team, I have a buddy who's a business owner, and he has a company that sells like sanitation products. And he goes, Erin, you're so lucky. You're in an industry where you're actually changing people's lives, your clients' lives, you're managing their life savings, you're helping them with goals. He goes, I'm trying to connect my team to purpose and meaning, and we're selling urinal mints. It was the funniest. He's like,
Yep.
couldn't be easier. And we are fortunate to be in an industry where we're truly making meaningful differences for our clients. Anyway, so I spent a lot of time on that, thinking about that, how to connect, how to get the team connected to what we do, because a lot of our team that isn't in client meeting advisors, the person cry because they feel so much more confidence than they did before. Tears of joy. But
That's right.
That's not in the client meeting, they're not feeling that same connection. So that's part of my job.
Yeah, and I've been to your office, Sarah. It's a beautiful office. So in this sort of post-COVID world, what is your policy on having people in the office versus being able to work virtually?
Yeah, we're hybrid. So we ask that people, and it's not a requirement, but we've asked that people spend 1 to 2 days a week in the office. Not everybody does. So it's definitely quieter. I'm here in Mercer Island, Washington. I'm in the headquarters office. And this office can operate with roughly 20 team members. On the average day, we might have 8. So it feels quieter. The energy is different. And some aspects of that I really don't like. So I've struggled with that one. But I also understand, the world's different. People are different in terms of what we all want out of life and career and work. And so I get that people, like a lot of us, want that hybrid approach and some people want to work from home the whole time. The thing I really struggle with, though, is the stats have been concerning. around how we feel more isolated than ever. So there's some really positive aspects to being able to work from home. And I like the team having that flexibility. But at the same time, people feel lonelier, like the stats are the stats. People are lonelier than they've ever been. Maybe part of that, at least the hypothesis is part of that, is we're spending less time in our work community. So we've debated that as a leadership team. It's like, do we make people come back 5 days a week? My bias, but I see the downside of not of only having 8 people here on an average day instead of a full office where we're trying to act like a family, where we're getting to know each other better, where we're doing the water cooler conversations, where we can share then the client that came in that we made a big impact for. That stuff can feel really good.
Now, do you get the team together periodically though? Like once a quarter, everyone gets together, you do some social stuff, or what does that look like?
Yeah, we do some social stuff. It's trickier maybe for us because we have a number of locations. We have 13 offices. We're in California, San Francisco, Arizona, and Phoenix. We're in Minneapolis and Minnesota, Washington. We have a number of locations in Washington, and so it's trickier. We do get the entire team together once a year for, we call it a summit. So we do 2 days together, and we go to a hotel somewhere. Last year it was on the waterfront in Everett in Washington. The year before it was the waterfront in Seattle, and we put together some really good educational content for the team, and then we also do some fun social things. And every year we get some of the most incredible comments from people just saying how energizing that is to get the whole team together. But it's expensive to do and it's time consuming. It takes us all, and I'm sensitive to that. It takes people away from their families. It takes people away from the client work that they're doing on a day-to-day basis. So it's disruptive too. We also do an annual, we call it the wilderness retreat, which is essentially glorified camping. We go get this giant property on the foothills of Mount Rainier, and it's got an old Forest Service cabin on it. And some people bring RVs. Some people go on to Airbnb and rent an RV if they don't have one. Some people put up tents. And we usually we'll have like 50 people show up for those things. And it's a 2-day thing. It's just an incredible experience where we're doing yoga in the meadow with Mount Rainier in the background. We're doing HWA is my firm, Heritage Wealth Advisors, HWA Olympics. We're just having fun. We're getting outdoors and having fun and getting to know each other and yeah. So, and then we do other stuff too. We'll do just wine tastings and things like that. But again, it's harder when we're spread out.
Well, you're speaking my language here when you're talking about Mount Rainier, and we share an affinity for the outdoors and all the great volcanoes out here in the Pacific Northwest. So love to hear that. A couple other things related to what you just said here before I want to segue into your financial planning process. So one is, you mentioned you're about 4 billion in size now. And if you think back to when you were, let's say, 500 million in size, if you think about the stress that you were feeling at that point, the work that you're doing, the amount of hours that you were working, the team that you had back then, and then you compare that to where you're at now at roughly 4 billion, and I think over 80 team members, are you more stressed today? Are you less stressed? Does it get harder as you get bigger? Does it get easier? Do the problems just change, but they're still there? How do you think about growing to the size you are today and how that affects you as the leader?
Yeah, a lot of advisors have asked me about that. They would say, I don't want to grow to that size because I don't want those problems. And they're different problems. There's different things I think about more than I thought about when we were at 500 million, different stressors. I'd say overall my stress level is lower because we've been very intentional on building a team of awesome people. And so I feel less stress when I'm doing something hard with people that I respect and I like. It just feels better. It feels better to work as a team. That's my personal experience. So while it's there's more weight with some things, like, we're responsible for the income and financial well-being of 82 team members. That's, to me personally, a lot of weight. I think about that. I'm pretty good at turning it off when I go home, but I got most of my team members on my cell phone, and we'll talk and we'll text. Like yesterday, we had a little gathering at our house, and a few team members came over. Just, I had friends and family over, but invite some team members over, and they come over, and so that's been very rewarding at the same time. So yeah, different problems for sure, but less stress because it's sharing the load across a team of really good people.
And I had asked Peter Maluk the same question, and when I'd asked him that, I think he was at, oh, I don't know, I mean, many, many billions. And he
Yeah.
said, my job's a lot easier today than it used to be. Even though he had hundreds of team members and many billions in assets, I think for the very same reason you just described, which is I got a great team and I got
Yeah,
people that now have specialist roles, and I can take a week off, a month off, a year off, and know that the company's going to be bigger when I come back because I've
yeah,
got this team in place, and I'm no longer the bottleneck. It doesn't just rely on me. Back when you're 500 million, it probably still relied a lot on you to make stuff happen. And if
for
you weren't
sure.
there, it wasn't going to grow.
For sure. And that's a good way to put it. I just, and we've been intentional around that, is looking for ways that if I got hit by a bus, is it still going to run, or am I truly the bottleneck? And in some areas, I probably still am, because I care. So, like, I want to get into the client cases, and I love learning about the clients and just understanding, and then pushing the team. How do we continue to elevate and get better? How do we get better? Because, naturally our human state is to kind of default to status quo and default to avoiding change. If things are good, we tend to default to staying at good. And so I'm I definitely push the team, maybe more than they would
So,
like, if they're honest.
so client cases leads to the second thing I wanted to ask you here, which is at this stage, you mentioned you pop in on a lot of meetings, but are you considered the lead advisor for a certain number of clients today, or have you completely gotten yourself out of being a lead advisor and now you're just Elvis and you pop in on different meetings when you can really add some value?
I don't have the sideburns, but yeah, I'm not technically the lead advisor on any clients. Every client has a lead that is someone other than myself. And then I'll join all of the meetings for some clients, the most complicated ones, the ones that need the most help, where we can really truly drive the most impact with them and their goals and their family. And then a number of them, I come in once a year. Sometimes it's once every couple of years when there's been enough changes and I really feel like I can help. Or the advisor, a lot of it's up to the advisor if they feel like they need some higher level technical help on the estate or tax side or investment side. And that's where I end up stepping in. And I love that role because I still get to maintain connections with the clients, a lot of whom I've started working with 25 years ago. So I care about them, I know their family, and I want to maintain that connection. And plus it makes me personally feel more connected to the purpose of what, like, about how doctors have are currently feeling the least connected to the purpose of what they do in the history of those stats being kept. And it's like those are the people changing people's lives more than probably any other profession. And if they're not feeling connected to what they're doing and the purpose and why it matters, and feeling like they're making a difference, it's hard for all of us.
And at some point, obviously, when you're starting, you were the advisor for everybody. Was that difficult at all to make the switch from I'm no longer your lead advisor, you're going to have Joe or you're going to have Mary, and making that switch? Was that a very smooth transition over time, or did you have some clients that pushed back and said, no, Erin, you're my guy, I need to be meeting with you every time?
It was really hard. That was really hard. And that was, if I look back on last 25 years, that was the hardest thing, actually by far, to have done. That was really hard. And yeah, a lot of people, a lot of clients pushed back on it. And some of it too was just change. Like the change can be hard. So even in some cases, we had built out the team and the services in a way where we did this intentionally so that as I stepped out of relationships, the client would get more service from me. Because at one point, I was personally trying to serve 800 clients. And that's the reality for a lot of financial advisors in the industry. The latest thing I saw was the average advisor has 400 clients. So they're trying to serve, it's like, can you really serve them that well when there's that many, when there's hundreds of clients? And I told the clients, I'm like, I can't serve you as well as I know you deserve to be served. I'm acting as a generalist and giving you maybe okay advice or good advice on a lot of different things. But I share with them my vision. I want to build a team where we have a bunch of specialists on the team who spend more of their day doing that thing and getting really good at that thing, whether it's tax or estate planning or something like that. And then we bring that team of specialists to bear for the client. So they have their lead advisor who knows them really well, knows the goals and what's important to the family. But then we have these technical experts, people with higher levels of skill than the typical advisor would have across all of those disciplines. So I would share that in what I thought was an authentic and sincere way. That's what I wanted, and that's what my vision was. And the true goal was to give something better to clients. So it was a process. It took several years and not particularly fun.
Yeah,
So
and
I'm
it's
glad to
something
help be on
that
the backside of that.
yeah, and I mean it's something that every advisor that builds their business to a substantial size, they have to go through that, because in what you just described there, I think is so accurate in terms of how do you actually do it, where you go from the generalist to the specialist. And so as the
Yeah.
firms get bigger, instead of you trying to do everything and probably not doing any of it super well, now you can hire the estate planning specialist, you can hire
Yep.
the planning specialist, you can hire the tax specialist, you can hire the investment specialist, and then have, the COO, the chief compliance officer, the director of, operations, and so on. So and I think that all gets back to what you said earlier, as far as, while I still have stress today at this size, it's not the kind of stress I was experiencing when I was wearing all these different hats. Now I know
Yeah.
I got key people that know a heck of a lot more than me in these different roles. And so I'm sort of the conductor of the orchestra here, where I know how to play all the different roles because I've done all of them at one time or another. But now I've got people who have far exceeded and transcended my ability to do each of those things. I trust them. I have confidence in them. Now I'm just orchestrating all the people together to create a harmonious sound here from the orchestra. So would that sort of be a fair description of how that has evolved for you?
I think it's a great metaphor. Yeah, we've always internally talked about it like I was the player on the football team and got to a good level, and then try to transition to coach, and then try to transition to general manager, and try to then transition to owner, to be involved in the key decisions, but to definitely not be calling the plays on the sideline. Like I don't want to have a culture where there's a few people that are micromanaging from some level, whereas the advisor's going to know, just like at Home Depot, the person walking the floors, talking to the clients, talking to the customers, they're going to know better than anybody that isn't in the game, isn't actually in the game.
So let's switch gears here and let's talk about the client experience and the advice experience. So let's say that we have a new client. You've gone through the whole process of getting them from an initial prospect to now they've actually signed on, and walk me through, let's say, the first 12 months of what the client experience is going to look like and what the advice experience. And maybe we pick a case study. Maybe you take sort of a typical client of yours and say, here's what that first meeting looks like, second, third, here's what it looks like over the course of 12 months. Here's the specialists that we bring in different areas at different times. What does that look like?
Yeah. So we would do an initial discovery meeting where we ask a bunch of questions, get to know them, get to learn about their goals, ask about past experiences with advisors, things they've liked, things they haven't liked, things they'd want to avoid. And then we would end up sharing how our financial planning and wealth management services would tend to work for a similar client to who we are talking to as that prospect. And then after that, if they say yes at that point, we would set up a technology session, we would call it. They would operations team members, and that operations team member would set the prospect up as a client and set them up with all our technology tools, give them access to the technology tools. So things like we call it the safety deposit box, where they can upload their sensitive documents. We're not having to email. We share with them the importance of data security and how much money we've invested in data security, and all the firewalls we have built around client data just to make it as safe as possible. We set them up with dual factor authentication, which some of these things would be very basic. But what I find when I do second opinions on clients that are working with other financial advisors is they often haven't done some of those very basic things, and we'll, through those technology systems, get them access to their financial plan online. So it's a living, breathing document versus something that's printed out on paper that becomes obsolete within a few days because the data is changing. We give them access to their goals and scenarios online and allow them to work through scenarios. So we'll, after that technology session where we get them set up with all our tools, then our team will have collected their data through the portal, built the plan, built scenarios in their plan. Like one I just was working on Friday was scenarios where it's a very wealthy client, and we're looking at scenarios of they don't feel like they can afford to buy, they want to buy a third home, and the husband is reluctant, the wife wants to, the husband's reluctant. And so we're just running those scenarios for them and just saying, actually, your probability of success, it's 99%. If you don't buy it, if you do buy that third home, it's actually still 99%. It does not change your probability of success. And we run all the future net worth calculations, and it didn't make that big a difference. And he was able to see that. I met with him this morning after running the scenarios on Friday. And he was able to see that and say, oh, okay, got it. Okay, we're good then. And he's just like, it's just fun to see him have the confidence to make that decision. And when before he didn't have the data presented in a clear way to be able to make that decision with confidence. So we'll run the scenarios, then we'll meet with the client and show them the scenarios, and then try to zero in on what they want their preferred set of scenarios to be. And then we go away and we create, our various specialists on the team create the action items, create the to-do list essentially. So under tax, and we segment it based on the CFP curriculum. So within net worth, here's the recommendations. Within cash flow, here's the recommendations. Within tax planning, here are the recommendations. Within estate planning, here are the recommendations. And we go further than just creating the recommendations. We're running math-based, we're quantifying the outcomes of different decisions and getting to a level that I personally was never getting to before. I always felt I was given pretty good estate and tax advice before, but now we're actually calculating, like we're literally running tax schedules for the next 10, 20, 30 years for clients and saying, here's what you're going to pay in taxes over the next 20 years. That's a depressing exercise for clients because they thought they might pay. But then once we have run those calculations, then it's easy to just look at alternate scenarios and say, well, what if we do a few Roth conversions? What if we set up some tax holidays? What if we bunch your deductions in 1 year? What if we bunch your deductions in 5 different years instead of 1 year? What if we do a QPERT? What if we do a SLAT? Or what if we do intra-family loans or gifting to, your kids or your grandkids or your parents, even people that are in lower tax brackets? Anyway, there's all these tax strategies, as we all know, but we can then go run the numbers on them. And what I'm seeing in client meetings is people tend to then, once they see the numbers, then they're more confident just making the decision. Because most people go through life making all these financial decisions without really knowing the impacts. Like every decision's kind of made in this silo. Should I refinance or pay off the mortgage? Then the next year it's, do I, all these decisions, do I do a Roth conversion or not? And it might look good in that silo, but we're running the scenarios within the context of their comprehensive financial plan. And when they can see it presented that way and see the implication on all their goals, just gives them more confidence. So that's then that next step in the financial planning process is developing the action items, the to-do list based on all those math-based scenario calculations we've done. Then we meet with them again and go through that. And then I tell clients that's the most important step in this whole process comes then doing the math and stuff. I almost feel like that's commodity, even though what I find is not a lot of firms do all that. But I feel like that's almost a commodity where the big value is in implementing the plan and actually helping hold the client accountable to what they said was most important. If they want to pass on values to their kids and principles to their kids, well, we got to create a plan for that. But the plan's useless unless we go implement that plan, unless we take action steps in support of that plan. So that's the rest of the year. So that first set of steps and meetings I was sharing is 90 days. I mean, it varies based on how quick do the clients give us data and stuff like that. But after that 90 days, then the rest of the year is implementing the plan that's taken action. Do we need to reallocate the 401k? Do we need to take a survivor option on the pension? Whatever the to-dos are.
And what technology or softwares are you using to do all these calculations?
We're using a few different things. We're using Money Guide Pro as the chassis for the planning. And again, we connect the client to it online. So whenever they log into their portal, even on their cell phone, on their app, they can see it. And what we're finding actually that's a little bit of a side, but I think it's important. In the last year, we've seen over 80% of the website hits are on the phone, not on the desktop. It's a big number. So we're investing a lot in the app experience, the phone app experience. And so clients can now go on their phone and with the facial recognition, so they didn't even have to enter a password anymore. They can, with facial recognition, if they authorize that, they can log in and see all their accounts and they can see their financial plan and their goals and progress and status towards their goals. And then they can run their own scenarios. Like everybody's worried the last few years, understandably, about inflation. So they can go in there and we have inflation. If we have inflation set at 4% in their financial plan, they can go say, what if it goes to 7% for a long time? And immediately see, or within seconds, see then what's the impact on their probability of success? What's their end of life net worth? How much taxes are they projected to pay? All this stuff. And that's been really nice for clients to feel, one, a sense of control, because then they can go play around with scenarios, and two, just more confidence because then they can do it on their time when they want. It might be Sunday at 11 p.m. If someone's stressed out, yeah, we're not going to ask our team members to take a phone call at 11 p.m. on a Sunday, but the client can go look at it themselves, and then we can talk to them Monday during the work hours.
Now you mentioned that.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was going to say that was one technology is Money Guide Pro, and then we're using a lot of AI technologies on the front and back end of the client experience. So one example would be a thing we call e-meeting. And that is a technology that is intended to take all of the tasks that we all as a team in this industry would have ahead of a client meeting. You know, looking up RMDs, looking up all the account values, looking up their gains and losses, the tax implications, looking up all the key decisions that we have made, looking up the decisions we've not made yet, looking up the report, you know, all these things we do in prep for a client meeting. There's all these task lists. We have an AI that goes and does that. It goes into like 15 different systems that I personally, and probably a lot of advisors, would have to go log into and pull data down, or we'd have an assistant do it. So we have a technology that it takes about 60 seconds to run, but you run this technology and it creates a deck, like a PowerPoint presentation, and it's really professional. It's based on our branding and our color scheme and our design and all this stuff. It looks really nice. We get really good feedback from clients on it. And it helps to eliminate some of the just basic admin stuff that either I would do or other team members would do. And what that's helped us do is then take the team members and elevate what we spend our time on from basic admin things to things that might connect more with the client, that the client would actually feel and experience. Maybe it's an extra phone call to the client to check in about something. Maybe it's a phone call to the client to remind them about an event that they had expressed interest in. Maybe it's a phone call to the client. I just got a reminder from one of my team members a week ago that it was the anniversary of one of our clients' husbands that passed away. It was their wedding anniversary. And so I was able to text the client and just say, hey, I'm thinking about you. You know, this is a hard time and I'm thinking about you. And so if I don't have to do admin stuff as much, I can go do stuff like that with my time savings. So that's a technology we've used. And then there's another one that we call Advice Insights, and that's an AI tool where it's scanning the whole client base and looking for either gaps or opportunities, we might call them. You know, and actually it's like one way I would describe this is, and I do this with our team, it's like with this technology, I say, imagine you have an employee who graduated from Harvard and Yale and Princeton, and she has 850 years of financial experience. She gets in really early every day, reviews every single position in your book of business. She compares it to your clients' historical behaviors. She compares it to their risk tolerances, their goals, their aspirations. And she says, here's some things you want to think about. That's that technology. It tees up for us as advisors and our whole team a set of actions and strategies that our clients might consider, or that we should consider presenting to our clients. So it's not we just take the AI and send it to the client, but it makes our jobs easier because we end up finding things or becoming aware of strategies or things or actions that we might not have thought about. So it's sort of like how doctors are starting to use that with diagnoses, and you know, they're using AI to look at ultrasound scans, and they're finding in MRIs, and they're finding the AI is finding cancer more frequently and with more accuracy than the doctor, than the human. So it's not taking the place. We're not using the AI to take the place of the advisor or the human, but we're using it to enhance it and create a better experience and better advice and less mistakes for clients.
And those two particular AI systems that you were talking about, are those things that you created? Are those from third-party vendors? Are those from Ameriprise? Where do they come from?
So they're third parties, and then Ameriprise took those technologies and then essentially modified them and tried to enhance them in a way and make them more usable for us. And then my team goes and takes that, what we would call as the off-the-shelf version, which we're never perfectly happy with, and and we go pilot and test it, as I was mentioning earlier, and then work through some. There's always bugs and kinks when stuff first comes out, and then we modify it and get it to a place where our team can really take advantage of it.
Now, do you know the name of the original third-party system before Ameriprise gets their hands on it? Do you know what the names of those are?
I think it's e-meeting and Advice Insights. I don't think the name was
Oh,
changed.
okay.
So e-meeting was that
Oh, okay.
preparatory AI that we use, and then Advice Insights is the one that tees up all the next best actions that we should be thinking about for clients.
Okay. So we've got Money Guide Pro. We've got a couple of these AI systems. Like, are you using something for tax to do your
Yeah.
side-by-side before and after analysis? Do you use some estate planning tools?
Yeah, we're using Bloomberg Tax, and then we're using Number Cruncher for estate. And a lot of the tools, I found that other advisors have them, but often are just busy, just have a lot of clients, whether they have a lot of clients or they just have a lot going on with staff and team members, that they aren't, I don't know, they're not feeling like they got the time to really take to go run the scenarios. And that's why we're, sometimes I'll be told we're overstaffed, like we have too many team members for the amount of assets that we serve. I'm doing that intentionally though, because I want to overinvest in the client experience and do the Field of Dreams thing, like build something really good that I feel like is differentiated, and then that'll lead to good things. It'll lead to growth. It'll lead to clients being happy. It'll lead to referrals. And so I'm okay making a level of overinvestment for that reason.
Okay. So just for fun here, if you want to share this, if you think you're overstaffed, so there's definitely some industry ratios based on revenue per employee. So you mentioned, and we'll see if I can do a quick calculation here. You've got 82 employees, I think you mentioned. So if we take 82, so again, if you don't want to share this, I get it, but is your revenue above 25 million or below 25 million?
Above.
Okay. So I would not say you're overstaffed.
Okay.
So at 25 million, 82 employees, that's about 300,000 in revenue per employee. So
Yeah.
if you're generating somewhere north of 300,000 in revenue per employee, I could fairly comfortably say that you're not overstaffed.
Okay. Good. Well,
So
what I do
hopefully
know
it
is
makes you feel better.
it absolutely does. And I'm just going off the investment news that Moss Adams benchmarking they do, and it's the like the amount of our payroll. So maybe we pay people on average more per person. So that's where that comes
Yeah.
from versus maybe head count, like the number of people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that could be. And I guess the other thing that I would also look at is, so I always look at the revenue per employee, and the Schwab data would indicate it's somewhere around 330,000-ish revenue per
Okay.
employee would be averages across like all of the Schwab advisors. And back in the day when I was running Peak Advisor Alliance, we would target 350 to 400,000 in revenue per employee. And that
Okay.
really varies too. Like in your case, you're a fast growing firm. And so you're going to be on the low end of that because you're going to have to hire people in advance
Yeah.
of the growth, get them trained. So if you're fast growing, I'd be fine seeing 300,000 in revenue per employee.
Yeah.
If you're slow growing and you're sort of a cash cow, then you ought to be closer to probably 400,000 in revenue per employee because you're not hiring people ahead of a growth curve. So
That makes sense.
but then the second thing I'd look at would be the profit margins. And so if you are paying people really well, but your revenue per employee is still in line, then we'd also want to look at, okay, well, what do the profit margins look like? And if you have those two figures in line, revenue per employee and profit margins are, within reason, again, understanding if you're in a growth mode, margins are probably going to be a little bit lower. If you're in a cash cow mode, margins should definitely be higher. So I'm imagining that you're probably going to be in line with both of those, given the kind of business I know you're running there.
Yeah, that's helpful.
One other, just for fun, metric that we can toss out here, I know we're going to have to jump here in just a moment, is this, they call it the rule of 40. And this is something I first learned. I don't know if you've heard of it or not, but I at first learned this from Silicon Valley companies. And the rule is that if you take your growth rate plus your profit margin, it should add up to roughly 40, which means if you're growing, let's say 10%, which would not be fast at all by Silicon Valley standards or even by, advisory firm standards. If you're growing at 10%, your margins ought to be 30%. So 30 plus 10 is 40. If you're growing at 30%, then your margins might be 10% because you're putting a lot of your money back into the growth. So 30 plus 10 is 40. So that might be another metric that you could think about for your practice as well, as, where do you fall on sort of this rule of 40 continuum as well?
Yeah, I hadn't heard of that. I'm gonna write that one.
Yeah, and I got a blog post on that at stevesandusky.com, so can look that one up. All right, Erin, gosh, I could talk to you for many hours here. So as we wrap up, is there any final thought or comment that you want to share?
Yeah, first, just thanks for having me on again. I think these are fun, and I appreciate the opportunity to get time with you. And if I was going to emphasize maybe anything else, it would be around, like, a big part of our focus over the last couple of years and moving forward is going up the value stack. So we heard we've surveyed our clients and heard back that many of the things that are keeping them up at night were not necessarily financial in nature. And based on that, we had made the decision that we're going to offer more. So we've been looking at ways to go up the value stack, which, it's like there was exhaustive research done by Bain, where they created this visual about the ways we can add value to clients. And the visual they created is essentially a hierarchy of wants that clients would have. And it's designed to look like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So if you pictured that in your mind's eye, where the basics at the bottom, those are the basic things clients want from us. But only once those basics are met, do people look to satisfy the upper levels. So Maslow shows the ultimate human need is self-actualization. That's what's at the very top. It's what we all need. But only once food and shelter are met do we seek that. And it's similar with Bain's visual. So if we looked at the foundational wants that clients would have that the industry has tried to solve, it's things like we try to reduce people's effort, make it simpler for them. We try to inform them. We give them market updates and newsletters. We try to make them money. We try to make them profit. Those are foundational items. We have to do those things. But then once you go up the value stack, we leverage technology to do more for us. So we can do more of the things that are up the value stack. So it's like things like wellness. So we end up doing wellness workshops. Another thing on the value stack that's higher, it would be reducing anxiety. And then you go to the third level that has client wants that when they're fulfilled end up becoming what I would argue would be life-changing, which would be things like motivation, where you'd think of life coaching, or self-actualization. Self-actualization, that's just, it has to do with figuring out who we really are as a person at the core. And then self-transcendence is the number one, the very top, and that's helping others or society more broadly. So we'll do something. We're investing in ways to add value to clients that are up the value stack. So that was just an emphasis I wanted to make. That's given me a lot of energy. Our clients, we're seeing in the early innings of this, our clients are expressing quite a bit of appreciation for some of the services we're providing that are higher on that value stack. So I just wanted to put that out there because I feel like that's where the industry is going, where you have on one hand a race to the bottom, where you have technology and the Schwabs of the world reducing fees, and you can go to Vanguard and get unlimited access to a CFP for 25 basis points. So for those of us that don't want to race to the bottom and play the Walmart game, we got to provide a Ritz-Carlton or Four Seasons experience, in the hotel world. We got to provide an experience that's different, because consumers are, and I believe will always be, willing to pay for a truly differentiated experience if it's truly differentiated. If it's something different than, again, if you go to Vanguard, you can get unlimited access to a certified financial planner for 25 basis points. We got to be doing something more. And again, going up the value stack is one of the ways we're looking at doing that.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because and I've seen that study, and I know Fidelity's done some work in that area as well. They've adapted what Bain had put together on that for an advisory firm. But what's really interesting about that is, and I see this happen all the time with advisors, and I'll relate it to marketing here in just a second, is on that value stack, I think the base level is like just the basic financial planning, if I'm remembering it correctly. And then you said the top is transcendence, self-transcendence. Well, if you want to jump to self-transcendence as an advisor, but you haven't done the foundational stuff, or you're just delivering mediocre financial planning, you're never going to get to the self-transcendence. And so by visualizing it as that stack, some of it can be done concurrently, but we can never, ever forget that, we have to make sure that we deliver an incredible advice experience, and then everything else is going to build upon that. And as that relates to marketing, I took that same idea and I created what I call the pyramid to growth. So same concept as sort of the Maslow's pyramid. The very base of that, if you think about, hey, if I want to grow my business, oftentimes the first thing an advisor will think is, well, let's do some more marketing. Let's do some social media. Let's do some ads. Let's do some webinars. Let's like jump into marketing. And I say, no, if you want to grow your business, the last thing you're going to do is get aggressive on marketing. Now that might sound contradictory, but it's the same idea, which is the very first thing that you do if you want to get better at marketing is you got to make sure you deliver an incredible advice experience, because your best marketing is going to be a great experience that your clients then want to tell everybody else about. So until you are really good on the advice piece, let's not waste a lot of money on the marketing, because they're going to, come in the front door and they're going to go out the back door because you're not giving good advice. So if you visualize that as, let's sort of build up the bases here. And then in my pyramid to growth, the very top thing is market like crazy, but it's not until all the foundational stuff. Yeah. So,
such a good point. Yeah, because none of us are going to want to look for self-transcendence if we don't have food to eat. We got to get the
we
basics.
Don't have financial security.
Got to have the basics.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, Erin, as always, this is fantastic. And if folks want to connect with you, can they connect with you on LinkedIn or visit your website, or what would be the best way for them to stay up to date with all the great things you're doing there?
Yeah, LinkedIn is perfect.
Awesome. All right. All right. Well, again, Erin, appreciate it as always.
Thanks, Steve. Have fun climbing those mountains.
I'll try.
All right. Talk soon.